The wolf's breath plumed silver in the moon-washed courtyard, a soft mist that drifted between the rough-hewn stones and vanished at the foot of the old wooden stair. Eddard Stark watched the direwolf pace, its paws silent where mail-shod guardsmen clanked, its eyes like twin embers locked upon unseen dangers beyond the gate. That gaze held an omen Ned could not voice aloud, for words gave fears a sharper edge. Better, sometimes, to bear them quietly, like the cold. It was near midnight, the hour when Winterfell's towers seemed carved from blue ice. From the maester's rookery a lone raven called, a staccato croak that set Ned thinking of black wings and darker tidings. He drew his cloak closer. The chill cut deeper than usual, but it was not wind alone that pricked his skin. Robert's latest letter lay heavy in his doublet, the ink scarcely dry, the royal seal not yet cracked. He had delayed breaking it in Maester Luwin's presence, preferring to weigh the wax in private, hoping that postponement might change whatever truth the parchment held. Yet letters were like winter. A man could neither halt nor hurry them. The wind shifted, burdened with pine and smoke from the distant forge. Ned's boots scraped softly as he turned toward his chambers. The rampart torchlight flickered, tugged apart by gusts, leaving swaths of darkness that seemed to swallow the world between each flare. He forced himself onward, the letter a silent pulse against his heart. Inside, the castle corridors dozed beneath shuttered lanterns. Catelyn sat by the hearth when he entered, knitting needles idle in her lap, the orange glow painting her auburn hair with living flame. She lifted her eyes, full of unspoken questions. He had not meant to disturb her, yet she had known his absence, felt his unease in her bones. "Is it from the king?" she asked in a hush that felt too loud for the walls. He nodded, broke the seal before the crackle of logs, and read. Each line bled weight into the room. When at last he lowered the parchment, the fire snapped as though it too understood. "Robert wishes for a Stark in King's Landing," Ned said. "A ward to stand beside Joffrey, to learn the ways of court." Catelyn's breath caught. He cannot mean Sansa, not after last year's betrothal talk falling apart. No, Ned folded the letter carefully. He asks for Robb. Silence settled with the softness of falling snow. Catelyn set her knitting aside. The hearth's glow traced uncertainty across her features. The flicker made her eyes seem wet with unshed winter. "Robb is 16, she said. "A man grown in northern eyes, yet still so young for the south. King's Landing is hungry."
Ned understood.
The capital devoured innocence. But the request was not refusal. It was a summons cloaked as honor. Declining would plant the seeds of mistrust between Stark and Baratheon. Obeying might bargain the North's future for one boy's safety. "He is heir to Winterfell," Catelyn whispered. "Every lord in the realm knows it. Some at court may see an heir as leverage." "Aye." Ned spread his hands near the fire, feeling its heat but no comfort. "Yet Robert remembers our brotherhood. He was fostered here once, treated as family. Perhaps he means only kindness." Catelyn's silence spoke her doubt. Kindness thrived rarely where lions and serpents prowled the Red Keep's halls. They talked until embers dimmed and dawn's first gray glimmer bled around the shutters. Reason battled worry and found no clear victory. In the end, Ned penned his answer with steadied hand. Honor demanded trust between old friends, and duty demanded the North not stand isolated. Robb would go. Robb Stark stood upon the battlements the next evening, the sky an ocean of amethyst deeper than any sunset he recalled. Below him, Winterfell's courtyard rang with clank and cry as horses were shod, wagons laden. Theon Greyjoy lounged nearby, trading half-serious jests with Hallis Malin, but Robb scarcely heard. He felt as though the stones themselves shifted beneath his boots. To leave the North had once been his boyish dream, a fantasy born of songs sung by passing minstrels. King's Landing with its gilded pillars, tournaments beneath banners of every hue, maidens who wore perfume in winter and laughed like water over glass. Yet dreams changed shape when cast in daylight. The southern road stretched long, and at its end waited scheming men who smiled as they chose where daggers might land. He traced the crenel's edge with a leather-gloved thumb, feeling frost crust the stone. Gray wind padded to his side, muzzle nudging his wrist. The direwolf's steady presence calmed him more than any prayer. Footsteps approached. Ned Stark emerged from the stair, cloak swirling like a crow's wing. Father and son regarded the darkening woods beyond the outer wall. The silence between them could fill an icy lake. "When I was your age," Ned said at last, "I rode south to Foster at the Eyrie. I thought I knew fear. I did not until the day I left." Robb swallowed. He sensed wisdom cloaked in that admission, wisdom that pain burnishes sharper than steel. "What eased it?" he asked. "The knowing that my father believed in me." Ned's eyes, gray as the sky before a blizzard, fixed on Robb. "I believe in you, my son. Remember the North, and you will not lose yourself." They spoke little else. Words felt fragile things. Yet when Ned placed a hand upon Robb's shoulder, it conveyed a fortress of faith. Winterfell stirred before dawn on the day of departure. Maester Luwin fussed over scrolls of lineage, Septon Chael blessed each horse with murmured prayer, and the blacksmith Micken hammered a last buckle onto Robb's plain steel gorget, muttering about southern armor made pretty but frail. Bran clung to Robb's leg until Arya pried him off with teasing threats of snow spiders. Sansa presented her brother a ribbon of Tully blue, a shy gift that brightened her eyes even as tears rimmed them. Rickon refused to let go of Grey Wind's tail until Catelyn promised stories each night. Robb knelt to hug each sibling, his words sturdy for their sake. Yet his throat tightened when Father lifted Rickon into his arms. There was something desperate in the littlest Stark's grip around Ned's neck, an instinct that change approached. Catelyn kissed Robb's brow. "Write to me," she said, "every fortnight at least. Let me know your heart remains your own." He nodded, unsure how often a heart could write. The party assembled, 20 good men under Jory Castle in the direwolf livery, 2 wagons laden with northern luxuries for the king's table, barrels of pale ale, silver-scaled fish packed in snow, wheels of sharp white cheese prized even in Old Town. They rode beneath banners of the Grey Direwolf, though Robb's cloak bore no sigil. Ned thought it wise to travel plainly until the Trident's crossings. The first hoofbeats echoed like drumbeats of a slow march to transformation. Winterfell receded behind them, towers diminishing against flat sky. Snow flurried, light as memory, before melting upon leather and wool. Grey Wind trotted ahead, a silver shadow. Robb wondered whether the wolf sensed the shape of fate. Days stretched into weeks. The King's Road wound south through pine and birch, then bowed beneath the next damp mists. The party forded rivers slick with autumn torrents, skirted lonely barrows where the first men slept, and camped upon moors veiled in ghost-white fog. Songs around the fires grew softer nearer the twins, as if men feared fry ears among the reeds. Robb remained alert, absorbing every sight. Wild swans launching from bog pools, shattered holdfasts left by extinct clans, farmer cottages with onion thatch and smoke that smelled of peat. Each sunset he sat cross-legged at the brink of camp, committing impressions to parchment for Mother, though his letters never seemed large enough to hold the great rolling world. One evening Theon tossed him a wineskin. "Write less, drink more. The South won't wait while you sharpen your quill, little lord." Robb managed a smile, took a swallow, burned his throat. Theon's laughter rose, carefree as gulls. Yet later, Robb watched his friend polish an axehead alone, the flames gleam reflecting some private storm within the Ironborn's eyes. Every man carried his own north, he realized, though some might pretend otherwise. Beyond the neck the air grew warmer, damp earth replaced snow crust, and Robb discovered spring lingering in the south's late autumn. Hawthorn blossoms still clinging, brooks whispering over mossy stones. The change unsettled him, as though the seasons themselves kept separate courts. By the time they climbed the hills that guarded Blackwater Bay, horses panting, the red keep's crimson turrets speared the sky. King's Landing sprawled below, a living beast of brick and canvas and filth-brown smoke. The stench clawed Robb's nostrils even at distance. Tanneries, stews, bakehouses, privies running into the river. Yet within that chaos glittered tiled roofs of magenta and emerald, and on the highest precipice the royal castle threw back the sun in blinding flares. Their escort of gold-cloaked guards met them at the mud gate, where small folk jostled for glimpses of direwolf banners. Children shrieked in delight at Grey Wind's massive form. Some threw flowers, others spat, calling northern lads snowbacks. Robb kept his chin high, though he felt each slur as keenly as thrown stones. They wound upward through streets that narrowed then widened, past alleys where girls with painted mouths beckoned, past open squares where butchers carved sides of beef beneath circling flies. Bells tolled from sept towers, pigs squealed, minstrels plucked sad fingers across strings. Every corner clashed with the next, sight and sound and odor colliding so fiercely Robb felt dizzy. At last they reached the Red Keep's gatehouse, twin portcullises of gilded iron. Knights lined the yard, armor polished to mirror shine, helms plumed blue or crimson. Robb dismounted under a blazing sun that felt wrong in late autumn. Sweat prickled his neck as a tall knight announced him. King Robert Baratheon descended the steps in a swirl of fine wool, a grin wide enough to swallow kingdoms. Time had thickened him, but his stride still boomed with the confidence of the man Ned had followed to war. He seized Robb's shoulders, studying the boy's face. "7 hells, the North breeds giants," Robert roared, voice like a drum. "You've your father's look, and your mother's stare. Gods preserve us. Welcome to my court, Robb Stark." Robb bowed low. "Your grace honors me." "Bah, save courtesies for snake-tongued men." The king turned to his own son. "Joff, greet your new brother in arms." Prince Joffrey stepped forward, golden hair gleaming. His smile glinted like the edge of thin glass. He extended a hand limp as overcooked hair. Robb clasped it firmly. Joffrey's fingers twitched, tried to reclaim advantage, failed. The prince's eyes narrowed. Queen Cersei watched from the marble stair, beauty cold as the moon above a frozen tarn. Her dress of forest green clung like ivy around a statue. She inclined her head, no more than a nod to courtesy's altar, and withdrew. Robb sensed the court's eyes like thousands of arrows. He forced calm, remembering Maester Luwin's lessons. A lord is a stage where others perform their hopes and fears. He must not stumble lest all his realm tumble after. In the weeks following, Robb learned that King's Landing was not one city but 20 layered atop each other, each with teeth and appetite. By day, he attended small council sessions beside the prince, an observer more than participant. Grand Maester Pycelle droned of grain tallies. Lord Renly jested to hide political barbs. Peter Baelish smiled like a man expecting triumph without effort. Varys the Spider whispered so softly Robb doubted the man's chest ever held air. Joffrey's contempt grew subtle as rain turning to sleet. He mocked Robb's northern accent, ridiculed Grey Wind's diet of raw venison, laughed when Robb faltered at the intricacies of courtly dance. But Robb saw fear behind the prince's eyes the day Grey Wind bristled at a sudden movement. Joffrey stumbled backward, pale as milk. Ser Barristan Selmy instructed Robb in southern swordplay. The old knight was gentler than his legend, correcting stance with a patient tap. Yet even Barristan's praise drew scorn from Joffrey, who preferred showy flourishes over measured strikes. Letters arrived from Winterfell every fortnight. Bran's adventures scaling towers, Arya's triumph at hitting a target with needle, Rickon's new word for snow. Catelyn wrote of harvested grain and the health of Ned's council. Robb replied faithfully, though parchments carried more caution than candor. He sensed spidery eyes reading every crease. Grey Wind grew restless within the castle kennels. Twice Robb caught the direwolf pacing in circles, hackles raised. On the third night, the wolf leapt the enclosure, bounded through the garden, and cornered a slender shadow near the library. Lord Varys emerged from behind a statue, silken robe askew, hands lifted in apology. "I wandered seeking cool night air," the eunuch cooed. "Your wolf thinks I seek something else. I beg the young wolf's pardon." Robb withdrew Grey Wind, but the encounter chilled him more than any northern gale. Winter's first true frost came late to the capital. One morning, the Blackwater's waters wore a skin of brittle glass along the shallows. Court women donned heavier velvets. Beggars burned dung bricks for warmth. Yet compared to the north, the chill was a jest. Robb almost welcomed it. The city's sweat stench lessened, and breath steamed like at home. He found solace atop the castle ramparts, watching gulls wheel over the harbor. There he met Princess Myrcella, cheeks pink with cold, her smile unguarded. She praised Grey Wind's beauty, asking if wolves sang to the moon. Robb told gentle tales of Maester Luwin's lessons, of the pact between wolf blood and stark hearts. Myrcella listened, eyes wide, untouched by her mother's iron. She was a small reminder that innocence survived even here. Yet danger lurked. One afternoon, a pot of lamp oil toppled from a balcony as Robb passed below. Grey Wind yanked him aside. The oil shattered instead upon flagstones, flame roaring high. Servants called accident, but Jory Castle's investigation found no witness to the spill. The tale reached Ned in the north via Raven within 10 days. His reply urged caution but not alarm. Caution grew heavy as plate. Robb wore mail beneath tunics, never walked unescorted, and posted 2 guards at his chamber door each night. Sleep came fitfully. He dreamed of white wolves racing a crimson river, and of weirwood faces crying red sap that ran through the Red Keep's corridors. The court prepared for year's end tourney, a spectacle Robert loved better than ruling. Knights flocked from every reach. Ardy's Aaron with a mountain falcon on his helm, Ser Lal Crakehall whose destrier wore bronze horns, Ser Jaime Lannister shining brighter than dawn. Robb entered the lists at the king's cajoling, though his heart lay uneasy. Joffrey too donned armor of gilded scales, more ornament than defense. In the practice yard, he boasted of inevitable victory until Ser Hora's red wine unhorsed him twice in quick succession. Joffrey blamed a loose girth strap, tossed coins to silence stable boys. Robb observed, silent. On the day of the melee, the tilt yard roared like storm-tossed seas. Banners snapped sharp. Trumpets blared. Robb guided his gray courser to the line, Grey Wind pacing the rail with teeth bared. Opposite him, Joffrey flashed a smirk. The horn sounded. Knights charged. Wood shattered. Dust rose. Robb's lance struck Ser Meryn Trant square in the breastplate, unseating the Kingsguard to gasps. Yet Robb kept seat, reined swiftly, and saluted. Even critics could not deny skill. Joffrey defeated a hedge knight rumored to have taken coin for the fall. Round upon round passed. Robb's shoulders ached, thighs burned, but determination steeled him. In the 6th tilt, he met Joffrey. The prince's visor hid a sneer. Trumpets cried. Horses thundered. Joffrey's lance glanced off Robb's shield. Robb struck the prince's pauldron, shattering wood. The impact spun Joffrey, nearly unhorsed him. He clung to reins, flailing. The crowd hushed, then erupted as Joffrey righted himself. Judges waved flags, Robb's point. Later, in the feast hall, Joffrey's cupbearer slipped, spilling red wine across Robb's lap. Apologies flowed, yet Robb noted the boy's swollen lip and trembling as he fled. The prince toasted Robb with a brittle grin. Poison felt closer than salt on the table. The moon waxed fat, and whispers fattened with it. Robb heard talk of coin changing hands after each of his victories, of Lannister gold backing every opponent he faced. Rumors reached him that Cersei sought ways to see the northern heir humbled before the capital's eyes, perhaps in the feast's dancing, perhaps in some more permanent fashion. One dawn he received a raven with Ned's seal. A single line, "Trust the wolf within more than the men without." Robb folded the scrap and fed it to the brazier. He understood. That evening, after Joffrey proposed a hunting sojourn, ostensibly to show Robb's southern prey, Robb excused himself with feigned illness. The prince's facade cracked. His fury glinted. Hours later, 2 kennel boys found Grey Wind growling over a boar carcass laced with belladonna. The dire wolf had refused the bait, though lesser hounds lay dead nearby. Robb thanked the gods silently, but dread coiled tighter. He wrote to Ned every detail. Ravens flew north into deepening winter. Reply came slower, storms delaying flights. The waiting gnawed him. When Ned's answer finally arrived, it came not by raven but by men. Ser Roderick Castle and a score of Winterfell riders, cloaks brushed with frost, faces drawn from haste. They bore news of unrest along the wall, wildling raids requiring the crown's aid. Lord Eddard rode south behind them, arriving days later with mud splashed upon his greys, eyes shadowed by fatigue. Father and son embraced in secret chambers, and with them Grey Wind pressed his head against Ned's leg, whining a welcome. "You've grown," Ned murmured, voice rough, "but I see the boy still in you, and that is no flaw." They spoke until candles guttered. Ned revealed letters hinting at Lannister debts owed to the throne, whispers that Cersei viewed Robb's presence as one more move in a larger game of pieces carved from houses, not ivory. "I would take you north again," Ned admitted, "but to do so now would insult the king and feed suspicion we plot disloyalty." Robb nodded. He felt the weight of duty settle like winter upon shoulders previously burdened only by practiced mail. "I will stay," he said, "for the north, for our house." Ned's eyes glimmered, pride mingled with sorrow. "Then you must be both wolf and stone." The season's final tourney day dawned beneath pewter skies. Robb faced Ser Loras Tyrell in the ultimate tilt. The Knight of Flowers rode a stallion barbed in jade silk. Robb chose a courser stripped of ornament, trusting sinew over satin. Trumpets cried. Their lances shattered in a thunderous moment that left both men reeling. Yet both remained astride. Judges declared a rematch. The second charge, Robb's lance head dipped a hair, striking Loras's shield rim. Loras's lance slammed Robb's breastplate dead center with startling force. Pain burst across Robb's ribs, and vision blurred. He gripped tighter, fighting the urge to fall. At the finish, neither had unhorsed the other. The crown declared the bout unprecedented, and awarded victor. Why to both? Crowds cheered, yet Robb saw Queen Cersei's displeasure, Prince Joffrey's clenched jaw, King Robert's roaring laughter drowning rival sentiments. Robert lifted both young warriors' hands, proclaiming them brothers of the lists. Robb felt the false peace simmer beneath applause. That night, Ned Stark met privately with King Robert in the Royal Solar. Voices rose beyond the thick door, deep and strained. Robb waited outside, accompanied by Ser Roderick and Jory. After an hour, the door opened. Robert emerged flushed, beard bristling, but his eyes softer on Robb than before. "Your father tells fine tales of you," the king said gruffly. "Proves once more the North keeps its honor sharp. Be wary, lad. Court is steel under silk." Robb bowed. He glimpsed Cersei's silhouette beyond the hall, lit by torch glow, lips moving in silent calculation. Days shortened. The city rings turned gray with rain. Robb trained each dawn, studied each afternoon with Maester Pycelle on the histories of great councils, and shared quiet conclaves with Lord Renly, whose jokes hid real counsel about surviving the ale-sharp tongues of high lords. In the dusk of one such evening, Sansa's letter arrived speaking of talk in Winterfell that the Night's Watch begged men. Bran wrote of the wolves howling for Robb beneath the hunter's moon. Rickon pressed a blackened paw print he claimed was Shaggy Dog's, a smudge that smelled faintly of resin. Robb penned a reply promising return come spring, though he suspected spring might find him still caged in stone walls of red. Midwinter's feast loomed. Rumors swirled that the Queen planned a pageant to eclipse the Starks' northern solemnities. Joffrey rehearsed lines extolling Lannister virtue, and whispered that Robb would play the conquered wolf. When Robb laughed, Grey Wind growled low, prowling between them. That night, snowflakes drifted over King's Landing for the first time in 20 years. Children squealed. Courtiers hid beneath cloaks of fox and ermine. Small folk built misshapen figures in slush. Robb stood on a balcony, letting flakes melt upon his lashes. He breathed deep, tasting the cold that smelled faintly of pine, and felt for a moment transported home. In that fragile silence he understood. The North traveled with him in memory, in marrow, in the silent drum of his heart. And so long as that beat, Winterfell could never truly be distant. Yet peace proved fleeting. As solstice approached, A masked ball in the queen's honor filled the throne room with silk and incense. Robb donned plain sable, a direwolf mask of ash-black wood. He danced with Myrcella, her laughter tinkling like chimes. Mid-step, she faltered, eyes widening. As a figure in a lion's mask brushed past, dropping a folded parchment into Robb's palm. Later, alone beneath flickering sconces, he opened it. 3 words in a flowing hand. "Beware the purple," nothing more. He sought the corridor's hush, but footsteps echoed near. Lord Baelish emerged, smiling as though privy to some joke only he found clever. "Enjoying our southern hospitality, Lord Stark?" Robb concealed the note, nodded. Peter's eyes lingered on his hand before gliding away. "Court is a maze," Baelish said softly. "Remember, some cheese is laid only to bait the cleverest mice." Robb parted with stiff courtesy. A chill deeper than any northern night sank into him. As the year ended, Ned Stark prepared to ride north again, summoned by urgent letters from the Night's Watch. Father and son clasped forearms in the courtyard under pale dawn. Snow dusted Ned's hair, settling upon his lashes like a crown of frost. "I leave you one final lesson," Ned said. "A man who listens learns what silence hides." He touched Robb's chest above the heart. "Listen always." Robb swallowed the lump of child within. "I will, father." Gray wind whined as Ned mounted. The company rode through the city's western gate, banners snapping, hoofs thundering over cobbles. Robb watched until the last speck vanished into swirling snow. Then he turned toward the Red Keep, where bells tolled midday though morning yet lingered. Behind those walls, lions stalked, foxes plodded, spiders spun, and somewhere a blade waited to carve the north from its air. Robb squared his shoulders, lifted his head, and beckoned gray wind to heel. The winter wolf walked into the lion's den, and King's Landing shivered though no wind blew. The morning after Lord Eddard rode north, a hush lay over the Red Keep as though the castle itself felt the wrench of his departure. Robb rose before dawn, waked by gray wind's low growl at some distant clatter echoing through the courtyard. He pulled on a plain linen shirt, laced his gambeson, and stepped to the balcony. The pre-dawn sky was that strange southern violet that never quite surrendered to black. Lanterns guttered along the walls, their glow diluted by mist sweeping in from the river. Somewhere in the distance a gull cried, an alien sound this deep into winter, and proof the Blackwater still ran free of ice. He breathed the faint chill and tried to imagine the hoarse gate of Winterfell, snow piled against its beams, the cold so clean it stung inside the lungs. Here the air smelled of wet stone, coal soot, and the tannery someplace below the city walls where hides were boiled. All at once he felt smaller than he ever had in his father's vast halls, smaller than when he first held a wooden sword. He wondered if that was part of court's design. Reduce a man to someone who would bargain bits of himself just to feel large again. The day's schedule unfurled much as the ones before: lessons in heraldry with Septon Mordain, posture drills in the practice yard, council observation at midday, but each moment felt subtly altered by Ned Stark's absence. Guards bowed with exaggerated formality. Courtiers offered brittle smiles that vanished before their lips closed. Even Ser Barristan's corrections during swordplay came in softer tones, as though a shield had been removed between Robb and whatever judgment the court meant to pass. When the sun sat halfway to its zenith, Grand Maester Pycelle sent word that Prince Joffrey and Lady Sansa, accompanied by the Septa and a brace of Lannister knights, would walk the garden paths for exercise. Robb was invited, no required, to join. He bathed and dressed quickly, choosing modest gray wool cinched with a narrow belt. At his throat he fastened the blue ribbon Sansa had gifted him at Winterfell. Its humble knot steadied him. The Godswood garden behind Maegor's Holdfast was nothing like the Wolfswood at home, yet in winter's pall it claimed a certain stark beauty. Frozen fountains rose like glass claws, and the thin rime on hedge leaves caught the light so each droplet became a tiny shard of sun. Robb arrived to find Joffrey already strutting beside a newly trimmed rose bed, one hand resting on the hilt of a jeweled dagger that surely had never tasted blood. Sansa hovered 2 paces back, speaking softly with Myrcella, their breath visible. Ser Mandan Moore and Ser Boros Blunt kept watch, their armor bright as hammered snow. "Stark," Joffrey called, the single syllable as sharp as the frost underfoot. "You've missed the best of the morning. Come see the queen roses. They're said to bloom crimson all year in the south." Robb joined him, boots crunching pale grass. Gray wind padded after, hackles raised at the guard's proximity. The direwolf's presence drew wary glances, but Robb refused to kennel the beast merely to soothe lion nerves. Joffrey indicated a barren bush whose stems had been cut back severely, leaving only a cluster of tight buds, each frost-kissed and brittle. "They'll break any day now," the prince said. "A miracle of southern light." Robb saw nothing miraculous in buds forced to bloom against the season. "In the north we let things sleep," he replied, turning a bud gently to spare its voice beneath his glove. "Dreams need the dark to grow strong." The prince's smile thinned. "Dreams? This is the realm of waking deeds, Stark. Perhaps that's why your folk are always building songs of the past. Too much snow in the ears." Sansa cleared her throat. Myrcella watched Robb anxiously. He felt the garden close in. The clipped hedges, the statues of seven-faced saints, the distant gleam of the Tower of the Hand where his father had once worked. But his father was riding beyond the neck now, and Robb alone must weigh words. "You speak truth, your highness," he said, calm as pine. "Deeds matter, yet a man who cannot dream of better deeds seldom achieves them." Joffrey laughed, but the sound lacked ease. He gestured and the party moved on. Robb fell into step beside Sansa. Her eyes darted up, summer sky blue, then down again, anxious. He whispered, "Are you well enough?" "I am," she said. A moment passed before she added, "Joffrey means to impress the court at Midwinter's feast. He talked of releasing caged doves under crystal lanterns, as the Bravosi do." She hesitated. "But no winter doves live in the city. They would have to be brought from Pentos or caught in alleys." Robb heard the unspoken cruelty. Half-starved birds trapped in filth, then forced into a spectacle. He knew better than to condemn the plan aloud, but Sansa saw his jaw tighten and offered a faint nod of gratitude. They completed 3 circuits of the garden, stepping around patches of ice where fountains had overflowed. At the 4th bend, as Joffrey moved ahead with Ser Boros to examine a stone bench carved with Lannister lions, Robb felt eyes upon him. He turned. Lord Varys stood between 2 frost-whitened hedges, robed in lavender silk that seemed immune to the cold. No breath misted from his lips. "Good morrow, Lord Stark," the eunuch sang, voice soft enough to caress. "The court speaks of your tourney prowess yet. It seems northern steel rings true." Robb inclined his head warily. "Steel rings true everywhere." "So it does." Varys folded pale hands. "Still songs fill the air, of lions that prowl by night, of wolves who stand sentinel in the dark. A pity songs so often end in weeping." Robb refused to chew the bait. "Is there something you wish to say, my lord?" "Merely admiration." Varys's eyes drifted to Grey Wind, who stared back, teeth bared. "And a caution. Rosebuds forced in winter rarely survive spring." Before Robb could reply, the eunuch melted away through a servant's postern, silk whispering like retreating water. That night, as twilight shrouded King's Landing in a bruise-colored haze, Robb and Theon walked the outer wall above the dried moat of Maegor's Holdfast to stretch their legs. Theon carried a flagon of summer wine filched from Lord Renly's table. Robb declined a drink, his thoughts swirling colder than the wine. "What crawls inside your head this eve?" Theon asked, swinging long legs atop the parapet. "You stare at those boats like they've grown fangs." Below, torches dotted the harbor, reflected upon sluggish waves like broken chains of fire. "My father said a man should listen for what silence hides." Robb's words left his lips as vapor. "The court grows quiet, yet danger feels louder." Theon shrugged. "Danger's a smoke you taste before you see its flame. Trust your teeth." He flashed a grin, but his eyes turned serious. "If any mean you harm, we'll gut them." Robb smiled despite himself. "And you'll sing while you do?" I'll whistle. The Ironborn leaned back, gaze on the fat moon rising. Mind you, I'd leave a song or two behind. Men should know who carved them. Pause. And if you fall? Robb asked. Then sing louder, Theon said, till the sea herself remembers me. They sat until the wine was gone and the watch bells told the second hour. When Robb returned to his chamber, he paused outside the door. Within, gray wind padded in slow circles, nose to the floor, as though reading a letter none else could see. Robb knelt, laid a hand on the wolf's back. Muscles trembled beneath the fur. What is it? He murmured. Gray wind pressed his snout to the flagstone under the window. Robb searched, but saw only stone, mortar, and a single black feather, smaller than a raven's, lying in a crack. He picked it up. The central quill had been snapped in half. Not accident, he thought. A message perhaps, or a warning. He tucked the feather into his pouch, banked the brazier low, and lay upon the bed in clothes. Sleep came slow, and brought dreams of a vast purple sea beneath a bleeding sun. Over the next fortnight, preparations for midwinter's feast consumed the capital. Carts rattled from the river docks hauling spices from the east. Cinnamon, saffron, star anise, to perfume dishes beyond counting. Whole boars were roasted over open pits in the outer yards. Barrels of Myrish red stacked in rows taller than a man. Queen Circe ordered thousands of crystal lanterns imported from Tyrosh at ruinous cost, intent on making the throne room glitter like a dragon's hoard. Robb trained each morning with Ser Barristan. The old knight taught the water dance step favored by Bravosi, though it felt unnatural beside the heavier northern stance. A sword can be reed or iron, Barristan said. Know when to bend. Yet he acknowledged Robb's strength lay in the steadiness of his guard. The young wolf absorbed each lesson, shaping a hybrid style that surprised practice partners. One mist-crowned dawn, as Robb broke his fast on barley porridge, a page in Lannister crimson appeared bearing a formal invitation sealed with gold wax. Prince Joffrey requested his northern guests' attendance at a private hunt beyond the city walls, 2 days hence, to honor the coming feast. The invitation emphasized that no direwolves could accompany, for safety of hounds and game. Caution thrummed in Robb's veins. He recalled the poisoned boar meat, the spilled lamp oil. He brought the parchment to Ser Barristan that afternoon. The old Kingsguard read it slowly, brows sinking. Hunts are dangerous, my lord. Accidents multiply in forests. His white cloak rustled as he folded the letter. Yet refusal might brand you fearful. Robb considered. My father said trust the wolf within. If danger lies in the woods, I should face it with eyes open, not cower behind walls. Barristan's lips curved. Whether in admiration or regret Robb could not tell. Then prepare. He did. He spent the next evening in the smithy choosing a helm of mail over the ornate half-mask the armorer offered. He tightened his saddle girth thrice the morning of the hunt, fed Grey Wind a hearty meal, and left the wolf within Maegor's holdfast under watch of 3 Stark men and Hallis Malin, whose archery was truest among the escort. The hunting party gathered at the king's gate. Joffrey in a mantle of sable and crimson, sword belted ostentatiously beneath a cloak studded with tiny antlers. Sandor Clegane grim as night beside him. Ser Boros blunt, red-faced, 2 kennel masters with packs of hounds straining at leashes, and Sansa upon a palfrey white as hoarfrost. Robb frowned. My lady, you ride? I am to watch from the ridge, Sansa said quickly. The queen thought the spectacle might pass pleasantly. Robb bit back a retort. Hunting accidents spared neither princess nor bastard-born. But Cersei appeared then, all blazing emerald silk and lion gold hair, and there was no time for argument. The gates opened, and they rode into crisp countryside where winter fields lay fallow and pale. The journey to the royal preserve took half the morning. Blue shadows pooled between rolling hills striped with frost. Priests had sprinkled cobblestone shrines with new evergreen sprigs. At last they halted before oak palisades enclosing a swath of forest reserved for nobility. From the east climbed the sun, pale and uncertain, as if reluctant to witness what transpired. Joffrey declared the game. 2 great stags, fattened on grain, loosed into the preserve 3 days prior. Whoever brought down the larger would be champion of the day. Robb eyed the prince's spear, its tip polished mirror-bright but edges blunt. Show weapon rather than true. Sandor muttered something Robb could not catch and spurred his destrier after the hounds. The hunt began with wild pounding of hooves, horns sounding, dogs yelping. Robb kept to the rear, observing. Joffrey's mount danced nervously as the prince urged it too hard around bramble patches. Twice a squire had to right his saddle. Robb veered up a trail veiled by cedar limbs, trusting his instincts rather than the chaotic lead. He had not gone a quarter mile when the foliage ahead shivered. A stag burst onto the path, massive antlers like thrown spires. Robb drew his longbow in a practiced sweep, but held. The stag's chest heaved, its eyes rolled. Behind it tore a cluster of dogs, fangs snapping. Robb loosed an arrow but into the ground before the lead hound. The arrow thunked. The dogs skidded, yelped, diverted. The stag bounded left, vanishing. Robb kept his bow raised. The dogs milled. Footfalls sounded behind. Joffrey emerged with Ser Boros and a squire. "You had him," the prince barked. "Why waste the shot?" He was cornered, tired. "It wasn't sport," Robb said, breathing steady. "He'll lead a better chase." Joffrey flushed scarlet. "A lord takes the kill, or stands aside for those with stomach." Before Robb could answer, the underbrush to their left exploded in howl and steel. Sandor Clegane's horse crashed through, bearing its rider and a bleeding stag draped over the saddle. The beast's throat gaped red, its antlers hacked in half. Sandor swung down wordlessly and dumped the carcass at Joffrey's feet. "A kill for the prince," he said. "If gilded lads call that sport." Joffrey stiffened, nostrils flaring. Ser Boros stepped between them, but Sandor merely wiped his blade on moss and remounted. He cast Robb a stare that might have been respect or warning. Then he vanished into the trees. The day ended early. Joffrey declared himself victor by right of the hound's service. Sansa forced applause. Ser Boros shouted compliments loud enough for ravens back at the city. Robb said nothing. His silence drove the prince to smirking fury, yet offered no chink his foe might pierce. They returned under lowering clouds that spat wet snow. At the city gate, a herald announced that Midwinter's feast would begin 2 nights hence, the final moon of the year waxing full. Robb, stiff from the ride, dismounted and found Grey Wind waiting in the kennels, eyes bright, tail still. He knelt, buried fingers in thick fur. "Soon," he whispered. The wolf's heart thrummed, steady and sure. On the eve of the feast, King Robert summoned Robb privately. The audience chamber was smaller than the throne room, paneled in dark oak, a lone brazier paints dancing across tapestries of the Stormlands. Robert sat in a carved chair, flagon in hand, seemingly diminished by the empty space.
Sit, Lel.
His voice sounded hoarse from wine or sorrow. "Your father writes of unrest beyond the wall. Talk of dead men walking. He wants men gold. The council squabbles." Robb folded hands over his knee. "If my lord father deems help needed, I pray the crown heeds." Robert studied him, eyes bloodshot yet intent. "Ned's sense of duty can bleed a man dry. I know that weight. I fear it on your shoulders too soon." Robb offered a thin smile. "Duty builds strong shoulders." "Aye, but hearts can fracture under the stone." The king exhaled. "Keep watch, Robb. Wolves were made for dark forests. King's Landing is one." Robb left with more questions than answers. The morning of the feast dawned cold and crystalline. Servants bustled, hanging crystal lanterns on chains across the throne room rafters until the hall resembled a cavern of ice stalactites. Trestle tables formed a half-circle before the iron throne, all draped in cloth of gold and burgundy. Robb was assigned a seat among high bannermen, between Ser Roderick and Lord Giles Rosby, an honor or a trap, depending who set the chart. He bathed, donned a doublet of smoked gray wool that glimmered subtly where Maester Luwin had sewn tiny hematite beads. Over it he clasped a short mantle of silver fox, trimmed ragged rather than fashionably rounded, northern, unpolished. Against his belt he fastened a dagger of castle-forged steel, plain but keen. Gray wind he left under guard once more. Apologies murmured into a twitching ear. As dusk fell, bells pealed across the city. Guests filed into the throne room under torchlight refracted by thousands of suspended crystals, scattering prismatic colors across armor and silk. The effect dazzled, yet reminded Robb of sunlight on broken ice, the beauty of danger. Musicians harped near the dais. The queen sat beside Robert, both cloaked in ermine, though Cersei's expression was frost itself. With a fanfare of bladder pipes, servants wheeled in the first course, honey-roasted quail garnished with sugared plums. Then came bowls of eel chowder, crusted with golden pastry lids, wheels of cow's milk cheese studded with cranberries, spiced lamb sausages coiled like serpents, trenchers of black bread spread with whipped chestnut butter. Wine flowed crimson as any battle wound. Early on, Robb noticed two dwarfs dressed as a lion and a wolf weaving through the tables, tumbling for laughs. Some lords guffawed, others feigned amusement. The lion dwarf chased the wolf, brandishing a wooden spear. Robb watched uneasily. He recalled the note, "Beware the purple." Lantern light skittered off the purple-tinted glass of the largest crystals overhead. As the second course arrived, a monstrous trout baked in a crust shaped like a mermaid, Robb felt a prickling on his nape. He scanned the gallery balconies. High above, a pair of Tyroshi Cell's words leaned over the rail, whispering. On the opposite side, Lord Baelish conferred with a septon. Further back, Varys stood alone under a curtain, watching everything while pretending to observe nothing. Joffrey rose when the main course ended, demanded silence. He gestured, and servants opened two towering wicker cages. Doves burst forth, dozens of them, wings beating phantom thunder through the crystals. Gasps rose. The birds wheeled beneath the lanterns, confused by light, and some crashed into the chains. Feathers drifted like ash. One dove struck a hall brazier. It burst aflame, spiraled, and fell among guests, dead. Laughter, screams, applause, all mingled. Robb's jaw clenched. Sansa's face blanched. She rose, perhaps to aid the fallen bird, but Joffrey waved her down. "They die for beauty," the prince proclaimed, voice echoing harsh in vaulted vaults. "Let all men remember that grandeur asks sacrifice." Robb half stood. Ser Roderick caught his sleeve, warning, but Robb's pulse hammered. He stepped forward, meeting Joffrey's gaze across the table strewn with candied hits of dove blood. Air thickened, silent except for the thrum of trapped wings. Before words could ignite, a cry sounded near the western arch. A groom stumbled in, tunic torn, panting. He dropped to one knee under guard spears. "Fire!" he gasped. "Fire at the stables! The lion banners burn!" Chaos broke like ice under a hammer. Lords sprang up, cups overturned. Cersei shot to her feet. Robert shouted for order. Joffrey's eyes lit with anger bright as forge flame. He barked at Sandor to follow. Robb's mind raced. A fire drew men from halls, left adversaries exposed. He glanced up. The purple glass lanterns swayed. Could be coincidence. Could be trap. He cut across the mayhem, moving toward a side exit. Sansa called after him, voice lost in clamor. In the antechamber, he found a corridor half-lit by torch cups. Varys materialized at the next arch, face calm. "Timely disaster," Robb said, not slowing. "Disaster is the most reliable messenger." The eunuch glided beside him. "Whatever set the fire will flush more than rats." Robb halted at a window slit. Outside, amber light flickered, stable blaze indeed. He saw silhouettes of men dragging hoses from wells. Yet at the stable's far end, another light pulsed, small, rhythmic. Signal? The thought cut cold. He turned. Who planned this? Varys smiled sorrowfully. "In courts, my lord, who rarely has one face." He gestured back toward the throne room. "Smoke clouds judgment. Be certain your lungs breathe air you trust." Robb pressed 2 fingers to his temple. "Plain words, my lord. Plain as I dare." Varys inclined his head. "Look to the wine." Then he slipped into shadow. Robb strode back toward the hall. His boots slapped marble. Inside, servants clustered around the royal dais. Joffrey slumped in his chair, pale, grasping his goblet with both hands. Sansa knelt beside him, weeping. King Robert roared for leeches. Cersei shrieked at fools to fetch a maester. Wine stained the prince's lip, a deep purple stain, darker than the vintage served earlier. Robb's stomach clenched. "Beware the purple." He pushed through, but Ser Boros barred him.
Stand Aside, Robb kommandet.
The king's guard hesitated until Robert belted him away. Robb knelt opposite Sansa. Joffrey's pulse fluttered at his throat. His eyes rolled white, breath ragged. The goblet lay tipped, a few drops left, enough to test. Robb seized a linen from the table, soaked it, pressed it to the prince's mouth, forcing him to spit the residue. "Milk of the poppy," he barked to a frightened page. "Then water, weak wine, anything to make him retch." Maester Pycelle waddled in moments later, carried box of essences clinking. He began mixing powders. Cersei's eyes raked Robb like daggers, but she dared not impede aid. Time ran strange. Servants poured water. Barristan pressed Joffrey's chest to make him cough. Robert cursed gods and men. At last, the prince's breathing steadied. Color seeped slowly back into his skin. Pycelle declared the worst past, though the poison, Vanasor's tears, he suspected, would leave him weak days. Robert sagged with relief. Cersei clutched her son, hair unbound. In that moment, she looked less lioness than cornered cat. Desperate. Her gaze met Robb's. Raw gratitude flickered, quickly masked by noble hauteur. Yet he saw it. The hall emptied soon after. Servants doused lanterns, and broken crystals littered the floor like shards of frozen tears. Robb found himself alone near the central table, the smell of spilt wine thick and sweet. He lifted Joffrey's discarded goblet, sniffed, subtle note of almond beneath the purple grapes. He poured the last drops into his palm. The liquid shimmered, footsteps behind. Lord Baelish approached, hands folded. "A bold rescue," he said softly. "Some might see treason averted. Others might see opportunity lost." Robb faced him. A prince's life was in peril. He rinsed his palm with water from a pitcher. Opportunities matter less than lives. Baelish's smile curled. A fine northern sentiment. Courts, alas, tally debts differently. He inclined his head and left, cloak trailing like a rippled shadow. Hours before dawn, Robb sat at the foot of his bedroll, sleep far, gray wind resting head on his lap. He wrote to Ned. A concise account of the hunt, the feast, the fire, the poisoning. He described the taste of fear and the weight of choice. He asked for counsel but offered none. He closed with a pledge. "I will not fail the North." He sealed it with dark wax, stamped the direwolf. Hallis Malin would dispatch the raven at first light. Gray wind stirred, ears twitching. Robb listened. Faintly, down the corridor, he heard the soft footfall of a single patrol. Beyond that, nothing. Yet the direwolf's instincts felt truth no ear could catch. Robb rose, padded to the window slit. The sky paled at the horizon, the first breath of morning. Over the palace roofs, smoke from the stables still ghosted upward, strands of night refusing to vanish. He whispered to Gray Wind, voice steady as frost. "Darkness breeds shadows, but we carry our own." Below, King's Landing began to wake to rumors swirling like snow devils. The prince's brush with death, the blaze, the dwarf masks, the northern heir's intervention. Alliances would tilt. Suspicions would bloom like red flowers pressed to winter soil. Robb drew his cloak tighter, feeling the cusp of things yet unseen. The dire wolf beside him rumbled low. Together they watched dawn claim the city, a slow golden march over rooftops and river. Somewhere in that blaze of light, Robb Stark felt the forging of his purpose. Not merely survival, nor even honor, but transformation into the Wolf King his blood strove toward. And in that silent testament to the rising sun, he swore an oath to the values that led him south, to dream in darkness, to act with iron, and to give no piece of himself to any lion's maw. The first bell rang. Robb turned from the window, reached for mail and sword. A new day in the court of lions awaited, and the wolf was not yet full. Robb did not sleep again until the bells for sunrise rang. When he finally closed his eyes, the candle on his writing desk had burned halfway down and gray wind lay curled at the chamber threshold. Head between his paws, ears flicking at every creak of timber. In dreams, Robb stalked stone corridors washed in violet lantern light, the floors slick with spilled wine that smelled of almonds. A pair of lion eyes watched from every archway, and somewhere distant a raven called with his father's voice. He startled awake to a fist on the door. Ser Roderick entered, snow still dusting the whiskers of his graying beard from an early patrol along the ramparts. The old knight's expression told Robb the city churned already with last night's shadows. "Your presence is requested in the Tower of the Hand within the hour," Ser Roderick said. Grand Maester Pycelle delivers his assessment of the prince's condition to the small council. Robb swung his legs from the cot. "Did the maester name the poison?" "They whisper Vanasor's tears," the knight answered, handing Robb a fresh tunic. "A costly toxin and rare." Robb pulled the shirt of heavy wool over his head. "Costly means chosen for certainty. They meant him dead, not sick."
Ser Roderick grunted.
No trace of the vial, no clear suspect, and half the witnesses drunk on Arbor Red. It will be a maelstrom of blame. Keep your wits. The Tower of the Hand was a hive by sunrise, ravens coming and going as though the stone spire were a rookery. Inside the council chamber, King Robert sat at the head of the weirwood-inlaid table, knuckles drumming an arrhythmic tattoo. Circles darkened his eyes and cloth wrinkled beneath the royal pin as though he had slept in his attire. On his right, Queen Circe wore a gown the color of fresh brews. Every ruby at her throat seemed a droplet of congealed blood. Varys and Pycelle occupied the opposite curve of the table, keeping quiet until bidden like rival crows upon a corpse. Littlefinger lounged beside Lord Renly, a polite half-smile pinned to his lips. Ser Barristan stood sentinel by the door. Robb entered with Ser Roderick at his shoulder and bowed. Robert motioned him nearer. "Tell it as it was, lad," the king said. "The council hears many tongues, but mine trusts the wolves." Robb spoke without embellishment. The moment Joffrey choked, the stain on his lips, the spilled chalice, the hurried draughts, the retching, he kept his voice even, naming neither servant nor supposition. When he finished, silence hung thicker than the brazier's smoke. Pycelle cleared his throat, a noise like gravel sliding. "His Grace the Prince rests." The toxin was thinned by water and poppy before it bound the lungs. Ser Robb's quick thinking spared him. Cersei's gaze, sharp as shattered crystal, flicked to Robb then away. Littlefinger's fingertips tapped the arm of his chair thrice, thoughtful. Varys interlaced pale fingers and watched everyone, eyes unreadable. Robert exhaled. "So the prince lives. But who sought his death at my own feast?" "An enemy of the crown," Renly answered dryly, "which narrows the field to half the realm." Cersei's voice cut. "Jests will not shield us. Someone brought poison into the Red Keep, and our guards saw nothing." Her stare lingered on Robb. A lesser man might have flinched. The young wolf met her gaze levelly. Pycelle wheezed. "A drop of tears can be hid in sugared syrups, or painted along the metal band of a goblet. If the chalice is the source, it is already scrubbed." "That suggests forethought," Littlefinger mused. "A servant directed, perhaps, or a cupbearer too frightened to speak. Fear is cheaper than coin." "Not cheaper than slaughter," Robert barked. He slammed a fist on oak. "I want heads on spikes." Renly inclined his own. "We must learn whose heads first." "Ser Robb, did you notice any figure near the wine when the fire was announced?" Robb forced memory to replay the moment. "I saw servants, musicians, some of the king's own men moving to control panic. The tables were abandoned." anyone could have approached. Cersei rose. Your northern brute of a wolf might have scented them had he been on a leash at my son's side. Yet dire wolves were barred. The accusation hung like frost. Robert's mustache twitched. Before tension could ignite, Varys murmured, "We might gain more seeking who lit the stable blaze." It drew half the hall outside. "A lantern fell," Barristan offered, though doubt stained his tone. Littlefinger smirked. "Sometimes lanterns jump from hooks all on their own, sir." Robert rumbled. "Find the arsonist. Find the poisoner. I care not which lordlings you disturb. Lord Varys, speak with your little birds. Peter, scour the coin trails. And you," he pointed at Cersei, surprising many, "rest with our son. Let the council hunt." The queen's fury flashed, but she sank into her chair, nails biting wood. The king turned to Robb. "Remain close at hand, lad. The prince will wish to thank you. And until we root the snake, I trust you steel-eyed Starks more than any gilded guard." Robb bowed. As he backed from the table, Varys's voice floated to him. "Steel cuts, my lord, but silence hides the blade." All that morning word scuttled through the capital. First that the prince had died, then that he was maimed, then healed by septons, then spirited away. By midday small folk argued in markets whether the lion cub breathed at all. When Robb ventured onto the outer grounds with Theon and Hallis Malin, he heard a washerwoman swear the Targaryen girl across the sea wove the spell from Dragonfire. Theon laughed. "For every whisper a coin," he said, "and the realm would have gold enough to buy peace." Hallis fingered his bowstring. "Peace in King's Landing? Easier to plate snowflakes." They stopped at a training yard behind the armory, where squires chopped straw men to shreds under the eyes of old Ser Harlan Grandison. Robb asked for space and a pair of practice swords. Hard labor cleared thought. He sparred first with Theon, whose speed stung like wasp bites, then with 2 Tyrell squires eager to test the Northron prince. Wooden blades cracked, dust leapt. Sweat chilled Robb's spine, but exhaustion dulled the taste of tension lodged behind his teeth since the feast. When he finally yielded water flask to Theon, Ser Barristan approached. "His Grace the King commands your presence," he said. "Prince Joffrey wakes." Robb wiped his brow, signaled Grey Wind to heel, and followed. The prince's chambers smelled of herbs and vinegar. Curtains drawn against the noon sun turned everything a dim rose hue. Joffrey lay propped on pillows, skin waxy, eyes gleaming fever-bright. Queen Cersei sat beside him, smoothing his hair. King Robert paced by the hearth, goblet untouched in hand. Maester Pycelle fussed over vials. Robb crossed the carpet and knelt. "Your Highness, rise," Joffrey croaked. His voice carried less malice than usual, smothered by pain, yet something sharper too, awareness perhaps of mortality. "They say you saved me." Robb met his gaze. "I did what any sworn companion would." Joffrey's lips twitched, half sneer, half smile. "Others fled. You did not." He swallowed hard. "I will remember." Cersei's eyes shone with unshed tears. "The Starks repay kindness with honor," she said softly, as though quoting a distant page. Robert cleared his throat. "We'll speak of reward once the boy is strong." Robb bowed again. "Health first, your grace." As he withdrew, Joffrey called, "Walk with me when I rise, Stark. I will show I'm no frail bird." Grey Wind's ears flattened at the rasp in the prince's tone. Outside, Barristan exhaled. "You've gained the boy's favor for now. Be wary. Debt turns to resentment in men who hate owing." Robb nodded. "A wolf's favor is coin enough." By evening, a leaden fog rolled in from the bay, muffling the city's heartbeat. Robb sat at his desk drafting another letter north. He described the poison, the council's fracture, the queen's brittle gratitude. He wrote of Joffrey's strange gleam, fear transmuted into brittle pride. At the page's end, he posed a question to his father. If war began in whispers, how could a man of honor shape them without losing honor itself? He had just dusted sand over the ink when a peal sounded from the corridor. A page delivered a note pressed with a stag sigil, but inside, the writing belonged to Renly Baratheon. Meet me in the Rose Gallery at the Ghost Hour, unarmed. Trust grows best in moonlight. Robb studied the curling script. The Ghost Hour, Maesters reckoned, fell between the third and fourth bell. Deepest night when doors slept. A trap? Yet Renly had shown kindness at tourney stands and council both. The note bore no Lannister red, no mocking little bird mark. Still, Robb placed it under the candle flame until the waxed paper warmed enough to reveal any hidden ink. None appeared. He left armor on the stand, tied on a soft leather jerkin, and whistled for Grey Wind. The wolf followed silent. Together they slipped along servant passages until marble floors gave way to carpets smelling of summer roses. Even in midwinter, the gallery ran between two overlooking balconies of the Maiden Vault. Moonlight streamed through tall glass lancets, silvering petals that never wilted, enchanted by gardeners with wildfire-heated walls. Renly waited at the center bench, torch extinguished at his side. He rose with a warm smile. You came. Good. I doubt a northern refusal would deter a king's brother, Robb replied lightly. Determined, yes, but I play chivalrous where it counts. Renly gestured to the bench. Robb sat. Grey Wind settled behind his legs, amber eyes watchful. Renly leaned forward, elbows on knees. You saved my nephew. That will echo through every hall from Sunspear to the Wall. But gratitude is a frail boat in rough seas. Speak plain. I mean to. Renly's breath clouded in the cold air. Whoever struck at Joffrey likely targets the throne. If the boy perished, Tommen stands between the queen's kin and power. But Tommen is only 9. The realm would crave a regent, my brother Stannis by rights, or perhaps a council. Or you, Robb said, a grin. I prefer gardens to battlefields, yet power seldom asks permission. It simply arrives. The realm respects courage and the image of stability. You gave both last night. The North's heir saving the South's prince. There's a banner worth mustering. Robb frowned. If you suggest I enter your faction, remember my loyalty first lies with Winterfell. I ask only watchfulness. Renly lowered his voice. Peter Baelish courts allies with promises of coin. Varys courts them with secrets. I court with possibility. Should the Iron Throne lose its lion, the realm might welcome a stag-wolf alliance more than they know. Robb's heart beat slow, deliberate. I have no desire for iron chairs. No, Renly said, but desire finds men nonetheless. Keep ears open. He stood, brushing petals from his cloak. And keep the prince alive. A moving piece is easier to read than an empty space. He left by a side door, footsteps soft. Robb remained, feeling the weight of unsaid fates settle like snow upon his shoulders. Next day's light bared the city's fissures. Gold cloaks dragged suspected saboteurs from the dock districts, most small folk with no link to the court. The Flea Bottom rumor mill named 3 different highborn ladies as poisoners by noon. The Pyromancers Guild protested the burning stable barrels were wildfire meant for lanterns, not sabotage. In the small council chamber, Robert roared himself hoarse, demanding truth. Cersei watched each face as though chiseling masks to fracture later. Through it all, Joffrey's condition improved. By the 4th dawn, he sat upright, pale but restless. Robb called to pay respect. The prince greeted him with a thin smile. Come, he rasped. I would give you something. A page brought forth a dagger. Valyrian steel. Its grip worked into spiraling wolves entwining stags. The pommel a single garnet eye. My token, Joffrey said. The steel was forged in Valyria, the hilt by Master Mott himself. Refit to your measure. Robb lifted it from velvet. The blade shimmered like running dark water. He bowed low. I am honored. Cersei watched, lips parted as if she would object, but she bit back words. Perhaps too public, Robb thought. Perhaps she hoped to swallow the debt quietly. When he left, Varys joined him in the corridor. A handsome gift, the eunuch cooed. Yet gifts carry weight like chains of silk. Robb slid the dagger through his belt. Silk breaks easier than iron. If one knows the seams. Varys inclined his head. His grace will grant audiences soon. You may find the throne room a colder garden than last you dined. Robb answered only with a nod. That week passed in careful routine. Sword practice at dawn, hawk-eyed council sittings, measured walks with the recovering prince. Joffrey leaned on a cane of polished weirwood, but each day he tapped it harder, challenging his own frailty. In gardens he spoke of vengeance on poisoners. At archery butts he loosed quarrels into boar silhouettes, snarling at near misses. Robb offered counsel where he dared. Anger directs the arrow, he said once, adjusting Joffrey's stance. But calm guides its flight. The prince glared, then shot again center mass. Satisfaction lit his face. Still, gratitude chilled into rivalry with every arrow loosed truer by Stark advice. On the 9th day, Varys requested a secret meeting by torchlit storage tunnel. Robb arrived wary. Gray wind prowled behind. The spider bowed, offered no riddles. Instead, he produced a folded parchment sealed with blank wax. A song unsung may yet save lives, Varys whispered. This was found upon a stable boy dead of knife wounds beyond the mud gate. No coin left, nothing but this tucked in a boot. Robb opened the parchment. Inside, a crude drawing. A goblet tipped, pouring purple droplets onto a crown. Beside it, for initials, F, B, D, G, each crossed by a line. Beneath, a curling emblem he did not recognize at once. Varys watched his puzzlement. 4 letters crossed out, perhaps 4 attempts, or 4 names silenced. Fry, Baelish, Dondarrion, Glover. Robb guessed aloud, though none fit. Possibilities, Varys said. As for the sigil, it echoes an iron coin from Braavos. A lily rising from sea. A faceless man? Robb's skin bristled despite the warm tunnel. Stories of assassins who wore death like skins haunted northern hearths. Varys nodded. Such coins by shadows. But a boy found with one? A riddle inside a riddle. Robb folded the parchment. Why trust me? The eunuch's mouth curved. A smile without mirth. Because the realm will bleed if lions and wolves bear fangs. Better a silent dagger than a roaring army. He vanished down the corridor before Robb could answer. That night Robb showed the parchment to Ser Rodrik and Theon in his solar. They pored over it by lamplight. The crossed letters might mark debts paid, Theon said. Which would leave who? Ser Rodrik traced the emblem. A lily upon water. House Bulwer bears a bull, House Beesbury a bee. No lilies, yet Braavos I. Robb steepled fingers. If Braavosi killers walk our halls, even the Kingsguard may not suffice. Theon's grin was wolfish. Then let the Ironborn suffice. Steel cleaves shadows. Robb half smiled. Our steel, but unseen. They set watches in shifts. Stark men patrolled outside Robb's door 2 at a time. Hallis Malin roamed balconies at night with eagle eye and yew-bow. A blunt arrowhead sheathed in pitch and sparks to light before flight should alarm be needed. Gray wind slept rarely, stalking halls nose low, yet rarely seen. Some servants claimed the wolf was ghost and could pass through walls. On the 14th day after the poisoning, King Robert declared the court would journey to Dragonstone for Septon Eustace's consecration of a restored September. An honor ride, a chance to display unity. Ships assembled at the quay, banners fluttering. Cersei objected that Joffrey had not regained full strength. Pycelle insisted sea air hastened healing. Robert overruled all. The fleet would sail at dawn. Robb felt unease coil anew. At sea, a prince sickened could die without remedy. On an island, a wolf's watch grew thin. Yet refusal was impossible. He packed sparse. Mail shirt, leathers, the gifted Valyrian dagger, a cloak of deep gray. Theon teased him for leaving tourney silks. Robb shrugged. Silk sinks fast as wool. The royal galley oath bore them across choppy water. Cersei cloistered below decks with Joffrey. Robert drank on the Ephesus with Renly and Barristan, retelling war stories louder than gull cries. Robb stood aft, inhaling salt heavy wind. Dragonstone's jagged towers loomed like blackened claws raking storm clouds. Lightning flickered beyond the horizon, bathing crenellations in stark flashes. At anchor, they climbed a long stone stair hewn by Valyrian sorcery, each step slick with sea spray. Septon Eustace awaited in rain-spotted robes, blessing each noble in turn. Ceremony dragged until wind howled through the courtyard, scattering petals, snuffing torches. Finally, Robert led guests inside to feast in the Stone Drum's cavernous hall. Here basalt fireplaces roared, but chill clung to every corner. The meal tasted of smoke and brine. Servants poured Dornish red spice to warm bones. Robb eyed each cup warily. The prince's goblet was cast anew of plain pewter. Mid-feast thunder cracked overhead. A tremor shivered the hall. Children screamed. Masons claimed Dragonstone groaned in every storm, but the jolt felt deeper. Goblets rattled. Dust sifted from vault seams. Robert bellowed for calm. A second shock, sharper, sent a tapestry crashing. Men leapt to feet, hands to hilts. Joffrey clutched his head, pale. Cersei shouted for her son's maester. Theon swore. Ser Roderick drew steel. And then, through the rising clamor, gray wind howled, long, mournful, echoing off black stone like a horn of doom. Robb spun toward the dire wolf. Gray winds fur bristled, eyes fixed on a shadow flitting along the balcony above the high table. Too swift for any squire. Lightning flared through an arrow slit, backlighting the silhouette. A figure all in mottled gray, mask of blank iron, blade curved and thin. Instinct surged. Robb dove, shoving Joffrey sideways as a slender dart hissed through space where the prince's throat had been. The bolt clanged on Robert's discarded breastplate, skittered, cracked in half. Pandemonium erupted. Guards fumbled crossbows. The assassin vaulted rail to beam, sprinted along, leapt toward a side wall sconce. Robb rolled to knees, drew the Valyrian dagger, flung it spinning. The blade flew true, biting into the intruder's calf. A gasp, more hiss than cry. The figure faltered, rebounded, disappeared into darkness. Sandor Clegane tore past, roaring oaths, but the assassin left only a smear of dark blood on basalt and a cold draft swirling soot from the hearth. Cersei knelt, encircling Joffrey. The prince trembled yet unhurt. Robert strode to Robb, seized his shoulders. "Twice now you've saved my son." His voice quaked with wrath and relief. "Seven hells, boy. Are you forged of ice?" Robb's chest heaved. Gray wind bounded in circles, growling at every shadow. The hall roared confusion. Yet in that din, Robb heard faint clatter up the stair tower, stones knocked loose by limping flight. The hound returned minutes later, helm dented, empty-handed. "Gone," he spat. "Vanished like mist." Robert swore a river. "The devil wore gray," Littlefinger said, fingering a spot of blood on the floor, "and left wolf steel behind." He retrieved the Valyrian dagger, blade slick red. "A fine cut." He passed it back to Robb. "But a cut that invites repayment." Dragonstone's maesters stitched the torn tapestry, patched cracked arches, but could not mend suspicion. The assassin's route traced to a chimney flue leading outside the castle wall. An impossible climb in storm, yet Prince proved it done. A narrow boat was found smashed on rocks below, empty. No body. Robert ordered every galley searched, every crew questioned. By dawn, none confessed. The fleet sailed back under gray skies pregnant with unfallen rain. The king brooding at the prow, Cersei gliding stern-faced from cabin to cabin, Renly whispering with Barristan, Varys absent below. Robb stood abaft once more, dagger at hip, eyes on wake. The waves folded behind like pages erased. What happened on Dragonstone etched only in memory and steel. When the red keeps red walls resurfaced through lifting mist, they did not feel a refuge but the lair of the lions grown desperate. Robb disembarked aware the city would now crown him with more than tourney laurels. Twice savior to a prince meant thrice target to unseen daggers. 3 sunsets later, Lord Tywin Lannister's host arrived at the capital gates. 2,000 knights in crimson and gold, 8,000 foot, wagons laden with siege gear for training. If one believed the herald, Tywin himself did not seek audience at once. He encamped on the city's west field, banners rippling, armor glinting. A message reached the king's table that the Lord of Casterly Rock requested private counsel. Cersei's gaze brightened for the first time since the feast. Robert drained a cup and grunted. "He'll want blood." Robb attended that council at Robert's side, though some protested. When Tywin finally strode into the tower hall, he wore polished plate yet no cloak, lion helm under one arm. Yellow eyes swept the circle, resting on Robb last. "My grandson lives," he said by way of greeting. "For that, Winterfell wins Lannister gratitude." Silk-soft words timed like hammer blows. Robb bowed. "I did only what honor demanded." Tywin's brows rose a hair. Honor is a luxury measured when debts are settled. He placed 2 fingers on the map table. "I bring soldiers to secure the prince until his enemies are ashes." Robert's jaw clenched. "Your men within my walls?" Tywin inclined his head. "Around your walls. Deterrence." Cersei's smile curled. Littlefinger's eyes gleamed. More confusion meant wider coin trails for him to walk. Renly frowned.
Vari blinked aulich, feigning surprise.
Robb sensed the north sliding toward entanglement. If Lannister steel ringed the capital, the king would lean on it, willingly or not. And a wolf equal to a lion was far from home. He spoke quiet but clear. His grace might consider summoning guards from each great house. A balanced shield. Tywin regarded him, unreadable. "Balance. Confidence," Robb said, meeting the lion's gaze. "Enemies think twice when realms stand united." Robert slapped the table. I'll have 50 men from Storm's End, Highgarden, Riverrun, the Eyrie, even Sunspear if they can stomach our winter. Equal numbers, under Barristan's command." Tywin's eyes narrowed a fraction, but he dipped his chin. "As the king decrees." Afterward, as council dispersed, Tywin passed near Robb. His whisper slithered. "A balanced shield is more fragile than steel of one make. Remember that when the first hammer falls, boy." Robb watched him leave, feeling weight shift within the Red Keep, stones settling into new patterns that only trembled now, waiting to fracture later. That night he paced the Godswood. Moonlight silvered the carved faces on pale trunks. Here sap flowed southern slow, yet the old magic lingered. He knelt beneath a skeletal weirwood whose leaves had long ago withered in heat but whose red sap tears still traced its visage. Gray wind lay beside him. Robb closed his eyes, breathed the damp scent of moss, and whispered a vow to the old gods and the new, to guard the prince until rightful danger passed, to safeguard Winterfell's honor, and to navigate the lion's den without letting wolf blood drown the realm in war. The wind stirred, carrying faint voices, perhaps only leaves. But in those rustles he heard once more his father's counsel. Listen for what silence hides. Silence hid many truths now. Who bought Vanasor's tears? Who hired the Grey Assassin? Why letters marked F, B, D, G lay crossed? With dawn he would chase them, through accounts, through thighs of wine trade, through whispers of bravos, whatever roads required. Yet tonight he let the silence speak. When he rose to leave, moonlight caught something at the weirwood's roots. A coin, small and dark, stamped with a lily rising from rippled lines. The Bravosi mark Varys had shown. Fresh laid, untouched by moss. Robb bent, but did not lift it. Instead he stared hard at the surrounding shadows. None stirred. Slowly he straightened, backed away, gray wind growling low. Coin and tree watched him equally. A message or a warning. Either way, the game quickened. He departed the Godswood with the knowledge that someone, unseen, played for stakes beyond any single throne, and that the wolf's next moves must be measured in more than honor alone. For in King's Landing the silent blades were converging, and every whispered oath carried weight enough to shatter kingdoms. Dawn spilled peach across slate roofs when ravens burst skyward from the rookery tower, wings thunder in the hush. Robb stood on the balcony of his chambers, mail warmed by first sun. Below, the yard filled with banners newly arrived. Tyrell green, Baratheon crowned stag, Aeron sky blue, Martell Sunspear, a garden of colors arrayed ostensibly for peace. Yet peace born of suspicion wilted fast. He turned to gray wind. The direwolf's gaze tracked pigeons wheeling overhead, but his muscles tensed to a hum beneath Robb's hand. "I feel it too," Robb said. "Storm or calm, something breaks today." A rap on the door pulled him back.
Sir Rodrik intered, face grave.
"A bird from Winterfell, my lord. It carries your father's hand." Robb slit the ribbon. Ned's firm script filled 2 pages. He wrote of wildling hosts massing beyond the wall, of Lord Commander Mormont requesting men. He advised cautious aid but no desertion of honor at court. The final line read, "Trust in the pack and remember the North does not bend. It yields only to the season and then rises anew." Robb closed his eyes. The North beckoned, yet his duty lay here. He folded the letter, set it aflame on the brazier till only ash curled. Then he donned cloak, buckled sword, and set out toward the council called to confirm the prince's public recovery. The realm would watch, knives sheathed or drawn. The wolf must walk that stage with clear eyes and steady tread, guard raised yet teeth hidden. For though winter still held breath in distant snows, in King's Landing the spring of blood might bloom at any hour, and Robb Stark, heir of Winterfell, now stood at its perilous heart.